something, Mr. Children. Sounds like an engine. Where? What direction? I can't make it out. It seems like it's all around us. Can't you hear it? That what you mean? Yeah, that's it. That's it. High-speed propellers bearing 105. Right, full runner.
Okay, how are we? It's been a minute. I figured I would just do a little update video on the progress of the Snowball, as it's now come to be known. Point is, this could be a little bit long-winded, so you might want to grab a drink, grab a beer, whatever. Where to start? This all started from a blue engine from my old blue first gen. I rebuilt it, painted it, spent a lot of time on it, and wrecked the truck like 1,000 miles later. So didn't want to get rid of the engine. That is this same engine here. And of course, I couldn't put a blue engine in a red truck because I'm, you know, OCD to the max. So it all started from just wanting to change the engine from blue to red. Sounds easy enough, right? Went a little crazy on doing aesthetics on the engine, admittedly. Probably a little too crazy. It all started kind of just with the paint. Stripped all the blue paint off, which was really fun in these, like, you know, small little areas. Just didn't come off super easily. Then I polished the valve covers because they're cast aluminum, which is a bit of a bitch to polish because, you know, you gotta sand the crap out of it, get them smooth. I think I went to like 3,000 grit or something like that, and they turned out really nice. So that was kind of the first time I'd ever polished. I polished a lot of things, but that was the first time I've ever polished cast aluminum to a finish like that, and it came out really nice. So of course, then, oh look, the intake plate's cast aluminum, might as well polish that, right? And then, oh look, the oil cooler cap's cast aluminum, I should polish that too. And so it's just super time consuming stuff that might not necessarily have been necessary. You know, like all these great little edges on the oil cooler, that was really fun to get smooth. Just a lot of sanding and a lot of time. It was very tedious, let me tell you. Once I had all that, it kind of started the theme here, red and polished, and that wasn't my intention, but it just kind of happened. I've always wanted a billet tappet cover, so of course got one of those. Much better than the factory sheet metal piece of crap. And then I had to get the billet timing cover to match, right? And billet freeze plugs and all that good stuff. For the injector lines here, I didn't want to do polish because I didn't want to go way overboard on the polish stuff. So what I did, might be kind of hard to see on camera here, but what I did was took a piece of fine emery cloth and just kind of sanded it in a circular motion, I guess, so the sand lines are straight on the pipes. And my goal was to mimic stainless steel, and it actually came out really nicely. I mean, probably because I spent a ludicrous amount of time on those. You know, like the curves, it gets really hard to keep your lines straight all the way around a curve. But anyways, that's for the injector lines. Then I'd put a clear coat over those. That was meant for like polished aluminum, but I actually took it off of the valve covers. Sorry for the compressor drain. The compressor's probably gonna come on. All right, we're back. What was I talking about? Injector line. So I put a clear coat on those that was actually meant for a polished aluminum, but it kind of made it look a little hazy, so I took it off of the valve covers. I left it on the intake plate and on the oil cooler in the hopes that it would protect them somewhat, because that was really bitch to polish. So don't want to do that again. And then to kind of go on with the theme, as you can see from these bolts from the blue engine, the paint, I spent all the time painting all the bolts and it just flaked right off, of course, when you put a socket on them. And then the threads rust from the inside out. and it's just a bit of a bummer when you spend all the time on the engine and the hardware starts rusting. So after some research, I came across a DIY nickel plating kit, and of course I had to have that. And 95% of the hardware, this is all stainless, but 95% of the hardware I nickel plated, even, you know, like the injector collar nuts and exhaust manifold bolts and just everything. And that's a huge process because you got to have the bolts clean, super clean, before you even put them in the tank. And the shinier they are, when they go in, the better they look when they come out. So you kind of have to like somewhat polish them beforehand and then polish them after the fact. It's just a huge process. So all this stuff I've done has just been super time consuming. Just spent a lot of time on aesthetics, probably a little too much. So now I'm kind of focusing on, I mean, it's still all aesthetic, and I have a problem with where I can't leave something like ugly, you know, even if nobody's ever going to see it. But that's another story. Wanted to do something a little different for the other pieces. All the stuff that couldn't be polished. I really like the look of cast iron when it's new. It's just got this cool look to me, and I've tried to clear coat it in the past and failed. So what I ended up doing for these pieces was I had them powder coated it's called a transparent merc. It's a prismatic powder color, and just to kind of mimic cast iron. Obviously it's not perfect. It looks gray in some light. It's like a metallic gray, but sometimes like I'll see it in certain lighting and it's just kind of like, oh look, cast iron, you know. Whatever, it's just something a little different, and I might continue that throughout, you know, maybe do the cross member and that. Or unfortunately, Hungry Diesel, for whatever reason, he wouldn't match that color. He said they only do the one color on the pump, which was kind of a bummer, but luckily it's not like super far off of my powder coated pieces as far as color matching. So not the end of the world, but it would have been nice to have it matched. But anyways, that's about all I've done on the aesthetics for the engine here. Briefly, I'll just kind of go into what I've done to the engine itself, you know, the actual internals. For my blue truck, I rebuilt it completely. So new bearings, new seals, piston, the ceramic coated pistons. This was a new head, so all new valves, you know, rebuilt engine. And oh, and then I had O-rings machined into the head, and then ARP head studs, whatever. So basically this time around, what I did was a Hamilton 188 220 cam with their billet tappets, Manton 3-piece push rods, Hamilton 165-pound beehive springs, and yeah, that. And then I also did a Hungry Diesel Performance VE pump, whatever. He says it's good up to 600 horsepower. I also did 6x13 injectors from Hungry Diesel and a BorgWarner S363 SXE turbo with a 68 millimeter wheel, and that's the billet wheel. So my goal is no smoke. I mean, obviously it's a modified 12 valve, so it's gonna smoke a little bit, but I would be fine if it didn't smoke at all. So my goal is power, reliability, and no smoke, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at on the engine build there. So that's that. As some of you more eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed, or may not have, that isn't a first-gen bell housing plate. No, while I had the engine out, the old A518 automatic transmission was just sitting there leaking fluid, looking like crap, and I've always just hated that transmission. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it's an automatic, and I like manuals. So long story short, I decided to put a big mama in there, the big fat whale of a transmission. That's an NV5600 6-speed, and it's massive. Yeah, I couldn't believe how big it was when I got it. But so it's tucked up in there as tight as I can get it to the tranny tunnel, and the drivetrain is sitting at about a 5.5, 6 degree angle slope, which is within common spec, you know, I'd be happy at 4.5, 5 degrees. They say 3 to 7 degrees, I think, is reasonable. So it's within spec, but I'd like it a little flatter. But to do that, I'd have to rework the entire tranny tunnel. So we're not going to do that. At this point, I got the engine in, or I got the engine and transmission together, and I'm going to cut the hole for the shifter. And oh, that shouldn't be too bad, right? You just lift the carpet up and cut a hole for the shifter. Well, as some you might have noticed, the cab is a little bit stripped here. You shouldn't normally be able to see a transmission through the cab like that. And that's because when I went to cut the hole for the shifter, I found some serious rust. I mean, I knew it was rusting, but I'd never pulled the vinyl out of this truck, and it was bad. I mean, it looked like it had never been pulled in its life. Half of the floor came up with the vinyl when I pulled it. It was like stuck to it. And after some searching with a hammer, I found out that the floor was just completely gone. You know, the old Dodge curse of rotting from the inside out. If you looked at it from the bottom, you would have never known. So that just kind of spiraled out of control and cut both of them out. The passenger side wasn't as bad, but figured might as well. And now, actually, just today, let me get a flashlight here. Just today, it's cutting on some stuff. Cut a piece out, and I found, I don't know if you can see that in there, but inside the rocker panel is kind of the same story, where it looks quite rusty. You know, it looks good from the outside, sounds okay, but it is rusting from the inside. So obviously I got to do something about that, or those are going to be gone pretty soon. So now I have some spray on bed liner that I got. I'm going to have to build a air dryer system for our compressor because it gets pretty moist. So I'm gonna have to do that. I'm not looking forward to doing that, but got some bed liner stuff here from Midwest Chemicals. It's called Grizzly Grip, and it's the only bed liner I could find for like a DIY application that's aliphatic, which means it's resistant to UV, whatever. Not that it matters on the bottom of the cab, but it's the best stuff I can find. And then I also got some aerospace primer and some thinner for spraying it. So that's the bed liner that I plan to do on the inside of the cab mounts, the rockers, bottom of the cab, and maybe some other places. Who knows? Here we got the typical first gen cowl crack, and that's on both sides. So that's gonna need to be fixed and strengthened. I'm going to build some sheet metal pieces for that and kind of spot weld them. Who knows where I'm going to stop, honestly, because I haven't been able to draw the line this far into the build, and I just kind of keep going deeper and deeper. You know, I'm going to lift the cab off and paint the frame. I was never going to paint this part of the frame before. I was just trying to get the rust off and, you know, paint like the inside of the frame where it was rusty. And, you know, now I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll paint the whole frame. Not the whole frame, you know, I don't want to lift the bed off, but like I said, who knows where I'm going to stop at this point. I'm kind of not doing the frame right now because I want to 4-link it like radius arms and coils like a 4th gen would be. So that's kind of what's keeping me from doing the frame right now, because obviously I'm going to need to do work on the frame when I do that. So I just got a lot of work ahead of me, but it's slowly getting there, sort of. I mean, it just gets more and more taken apart as time goes on, but at some point here I'm going to be able to start putting parts back on. You know, it was cool when I put the engine in, but it's got to come back out. That was mainly only for the cross member, which I don't know if I got a shot of that yet, so we'll just get another shot of that. Had to build a new cross member for the transmission because of that advanced adapters piece for the transmission to the transfer case. It makes it a lot shorter than it typically would be with a factory adapter, and it also makes it a male output from the transmission to a female input on the transfer case, whereas A factory one is male to male, which uses a drive coupler. So this should be a little stronger, and it's a little shorter, but it totally changed everything. I had to end up reworking that whole top plate for the first gen mount, move the whole mount back about, I think it was like 7 inches. I actually ended up lengthening the rear drive shaft and shortening the front just because of how everything worked out, which is kind of opposite of what I've seen people do with 6-speed swaps. So anyways, that kind of brings us up to speed on the first gen project, or the Snowball as it's come to be known. Obviously there's still a lot of work to do on the project. Gets overwhelming sometimes. It's just like a freaking Mount Everest. You know, I'm at base camp right now, but one step at a time, right? So still got a lot of work to do. Hopefully some more videos to come in between now and the time it's running. Working on getting better at filming myself while I'm doing stuff to make it, you know, more interesting content, not just me yapping about what I've done to it. Stay tuned for some more videos if you like what you see. Share, subscribe, you know, all the usual YouTube crap. Anyways, we'll see you next time.